Welcome everybody to our webinar today on the 6 demo types. This is the first webinar in our Scaling Pre-Sales webinar series. I should say our first official one. We had a great webinar with Peter Cohen a few weeks ago. We kind of threw into this mix, but we have a series of specific topics around scaling that we're kicking off today with the 6 demo types. So I want to welcome all of you, and from wherever you are around the world. We are going to be recording this session, so if you or other colleagues want to take a look at this later, feel free to share it with them as after the webinar. I want to start by just making sure everybody can hear me and see the screen. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking the hand raise button if you can hear me, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Go ahead and lower the hands if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. And then if you can see the screen okay, let me know if that is also working for you. Okay, great. So thank you for that. Let's go over what we're going to learn today. And before I jump into this, just want to mention if you have questions, then feel free to put them in the Q&A area. We'll try to get as many of those as we can before the end of the webinar. And I'll give you my contact information if you want to reach out. I would be happy to have any further discussions with you after the fact as well. So first of all, what we're covering today is how building and delivering the right demos at the right stages using the right methods and roles can help scale pre-sales while also improving the customer experience. So scaling pre-sales is a hot topic right now, at least from what we're seeing, and we'll talk a little bit about why. The challenge is nobody wants to degrade the customer experience at the same time. So many organizations that we're talking to are trying to scale pre-sales in one way or another, but it can be a challenge. And that's why we're doing this series, to hopefully shed some light on this. From our perspective, we'll probably bring in some experts that may be able to share their experiences as well through the webinar series. So the goal is to scale pre-sales while also improving customer experience and not compromising on that. So just a little bit of background on me, our company, and so on. I'm the founder of a company called Consensus. Many of you are already familiar with Consensus, have been to some of our other webinars that we've done. For those of you who are not, just wanted to explain briefly about Consensus. Consensus is software as a service that helps to scale pre-sales through interactive video demos. So we've been working on this challenge of how to effectively help scale pre-sales for many years, and we focus on the automation side, but we have a lot of interesting ideas because of how much we think about this 24/7 that we think might be helpful to you, regardless of whether you are trying to automate demos or not, because some people just aren't ready or don't feel like it's a good idea. So hopefully some of the things that we're sharing today will be helpful regardless, but we will also share some information about where demo automation plays a part in the different types of demos and where they fit in the buying process, especially for those of you who are customers, as we've invited many of our own users to the webinar today as well. So especially want to make a special welcome to all of you Consensus users. Thanks so much for joining, and look forward to connecting with you further on this if you have, want to discuss this or have further questions about it. I also want to mention that I'm working on a book right now on buyer enablement called Selling is Easy and Buying is Hard. No offense to salespeople out there. It's just a bit of tongue in cheek that selling is easy. We all know that it's not easy, but my point here is that buying is actually harder than selling. If you're comparing the two things, the buying process is actually a harder part of it. And the goal to effectively improve B2B sales is to improve the buying process. If you can do that, you're going to improve the selling process as well. So that book should be coming out in the spring. So just wanted to mention that as well. The reason that we are so focused on scaling pre-sales right now is we've been having conversations with many of our customers and pre-sales teams around the world, including large enterprises like SAP, Oracle, ADP, Thomson Reuters, and others, and mid-market companies such as Ivanti and Metadata and others that, that as we engage with them, all talk about how difficult it is to scale pre-sales for one reason or another. And so that's why this webinar series. Oracle is an example, just using the concepts that some of the types of concepts we're sharing today, and also being able to implement demo automation has scaled pre-sales by over 30% with their existing headcount in one particular division. So I just wanted to share that as some evidence that some of these things can make a measurable impact. So before we jump in, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking pre-sales. Many people, especially in sales or in marketing, are confused about this term because they think that it is the work that business development reps do before it gets to the account executive. And that's not what we're talking about. That is just typically called sales development or business development. Pre-sales is really the work done by experienced product specialists and consultants that are often called sales engineers, technical sellers or technical sales, solution consultants, solution architects. There are literally over 20 different names that we have encountered that fall within pre-sales. So it becomes a bit of a big mishmash of titles, but pre-sales is the umbrella, and it simply means that they need to, the customer needs to work with these experts before they can make a purchase decision, before the sale can actually be completed. That's where I believe it originated. In any case, when we say pre-sales, we're talking sales engineers. So I'm going to largely use the words pre-sales and sales engineers, so you can apply those to whatever other roles you might have. And when we're talking about scaling pre-sales, what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to free up time for sales engineers and solution architects so that they can do a few things. One is to be able to effectively consult more often. So these are highly trained experts in the field, and we've heard that they spend a large amount of their time doing repetitive demos that require little to none of their expertise, and they're often just doing these repetitive demos. And so one of the goals is to free up time so that they're spending more of a larger percentage of their time preparing for technical demos, doing effective strategic consulting calls, and so on. It also means helping the customer have a better experience so that you can keep up with the demand of demos. The demand increases for a variety of reasons, and so scaling, it means you should be able to keep up with the demand with existing resources or with moderately growing resources, even if the other areas of your company are growing rapidly. So being able to truly scale. So that's what we mean by scaling pre-sales. So hopefully we're all on the same page there, and just want to get that out of the way in case some of you came thinking that this might be business development reps and how to set better appointments for account executives or something. So what are these obstacles to scale? So one of the challenges is just the pre-sales teams are overloaded, and this can happen for a variety of reasons. One is if there's a huge increase in spending in sales and marketing, meaning you hire, we're talking to one company that's hiring 1,000 new sales reps, and the pre-sales team has been told they can't hire any new pre-sales reps. So they're thinking, how can we keep up? But sometimes the business realities that come down from on high, from the executives, don't exactly help us get to do what we need to do with the current processes that we have. The other thing that can happen is just marketing spending. You do a big marketing spend, and there's just increased demands for demos early in the sales process. Another kind of mismatch here is the fact that you can train and hire sales reps and get them going in let's say 4 to 6 months. Pre-sales reps to really become an expert in a complex product can sometimes take 2 or 3 years or longer, and it's just very difficult to ramp that up at the same time. Add to that multilingual market coverage can be very exacerbate that. Some of the companies that we work with have to service 10, 12 different language markets, and figuring out how to do demos effectively in those markets can cause further challenges. Another one that we're seeing regularly is going down market. So a lot of companies that have traditionally targeted enterprise companies are now trying to sell their products and solutions to smaller companies, mid-market, and even small businesses, where the volume, the deal volume is much higher, and the same high-touch sales process that has been going in the past, has been working in the past with large accounts, and the smaller volume just doesn't really apply. It really crushes the margins. Another thing that really is a challenge to scale is a lot of wasted demos or missed appointments. So a lot of no-shows. So by wasted demos, right, in a lot of ways you could say any demo you give is not wasted, because at least it's helping drive awareness and some education, but we actually see that the underqualified or unqualified prospect is causing a huge challenge for pre-sales, and it feels to the pre-sales team and to the sales team a lot of times that the demo time doing the demo is just a wasted time, at least in comparison to what they could be doing instead. Now, I want to do a little quick poll question and ask you, presumably you're here because you want to learn about different demo types, also about the concept of scaling pre-sales. Many of you are already trying to scale pre-sales, but I want to pop up a poll question. John, if you could in the background, share that. Which of these challenges that we're talking about make it difficult to scale at your organization? If you could just click all that apply to you. And we had hundreds of people sign up for this webinar. I think this will be very interesting data to get back, as we have a lot of you sharing this information as a group. So the pace of increased sales hiring and marketing spend, moving down market where deal volume is higher, doing lots of demos for underqualified prospects, or maybe you're here just out of curiosity in case this becomes a problem and you can already handle all the demo requests that come in and scaling really isn't a challenge for you. So John, when we get up to maybe 65, 70%, let's go ahead and share the results, unless it looks like people are, we can get up higher than that. 85% would be ideal. But this challenge of scaling pre-sales seems to be fairly universal. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. So it looks like about 26% of you say that the pace of increased sales hiring makes it difficult. 29% say moving down market. So about 30% have initiatives moving down market that make it a challenge. And the underqualified prospect seems to be universal. I'm actually not surprised to see that at 83%, because it seems like almost everyone that we talk to tells us this is a big problem. And then about 12% of you are saying you're currently able to handle the different demos and looking for maybe improved effectiveness, I would guess. Thanks for that, John. Go ahead and hide that. So some of the resulting problems that come from challenges with scale is that we force the clients to wait. So the prospects really want demos, they want them quickly, and we often have to, because of resource constraints, we make them wait. And that can, as all salespeople know, time is what kills all deals. I heard this recently from Clay Robinson, who just founded a little while a company called Mighty SE, which I think is very interesting. So a little shout out to Clay there. And I've heard this from my VP of sales as well, Rex Galbraith, who talks about how time kills all deals. So having the clients wait is not a great customer experience, and it just creates opportunity for the deal to fall apart. We'll talk about how we can help address that, but that's one of the challenges. And sales waits. So in pre-sales, in a lot of ways, the customer is the sales team. In pre-sales, we're serving the sales team, helping them and teaming together to serve the customer or the prospect. And making sales wait does not sometimes causes rifts and challenges, even cultural problems inside the company there's a lot of grumbling going on because, gosh, we can't get that pre-sales resource that we needed and that deal fell apart, that kind of thing. So wasted resources is another one, and also just overworked SEs. So SEs commonly report, we're hearing that they often have to work very long hours, going home late. That's not necessarily a horrible thing. A lot of us have to do that, but if you have to do that, you're on a treadmill of doing that, the morale goes down, can cause some attrition problems. And so, you know, these are just some of the resulting challenges. And then I would say another thing that happens quite often is just robotic repetition versus strategic consulting. You've got these highly paid, highly qualified pre-sales experts, and you're spending as much as 50% of their time or more sometimes on just repetitive robotic demos. And nothing against the pre-sales experts. And by robotic, we just mean they're repetitive because they're so early in the sales process or buying process that they're not ready for a strategic conversation or a highly customized demo. And so this can be a challenge. So when we're talking about this webinar series, what this webinar series will include includes topics on theory, application, original or existing research. We're doing some of our own research, which I'll share here in a minute. Case studies, tools and technologies. And so these are some of the areas that you'll see webinars here in the future. One thing I wanted to mention that we're doing right now is we are actively taking responses on a sales engineer compensation and workload research survey. So we've had hundreds of responses already. We'd like to get more. So we will make sure that we send this survey out, and I believe John is posting a link to that here in the chat. Please do not go out and just take the survey during the webinar. Of course, you can do what you want, but I'd recommend just deciding to do that maybe after the webinar or sometime. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes to fill out. But if you participate, you'll get access directly to the survey results. And we're also publishing the survey results in January, on January 16th. So look for that webinar. And if this topic interests you, I think it'll be interesting both for practitioners and for pre-sales leaders to see some of the results there. We're finding it very interesting. So with that bit of a preamble on pre-sales, scaling pre-sales in the webinar series, let's dive into our specific topic today. So there's a question about what do buyers say is the most valuable content from a vendor? And we're not going to do an official poll here, but this was a poll question that went out to a bunch of buyers by Gartner. And Gartner, the results came back with demonstrations as being #1. So they posed this question about what are the most valuable pieces of information. And you can see it's demonstrations, case studies, and value assessment tools kind of are the top 3. So I'd encourage you in both marketing and sales to make sure that you're looking at effectiveness in those top 3 areas especially. But it's very interesting that demos is #1. So I wanted to just share these 6 demo types that we're going to cover here later in the workshop: vision, micro, qualifying and discovery, technical, closing, and FAQ demos. We'll dive into these more deeply, but wanted to just give you a quick peek here. So when we're talking about doing demos, if customers want demos most, well, what's the status quo? How's the industry today? And obviously we're going to make some generalizations here, so please don't take offense if you don't fit in these categories. Hopefully they're useful. I think we just see patterns across the many different companies that we're talking with, and so I want to share these patterns that we're seeing. So one of the approaches that we see is this mantra of never demo too early. This is often something that comes from marketing or sales, and for some good reasons. Demoing too early can actually kill the deal. So what the goal here is, don't deliver the demo until we're ready and we're sure that they are ready. And we don't want to overwhelm them. And again, going back to this qualification issue, we want to make sure that they're qualified before we demo for them. So the problem is the customer wants a demo. In fact, they want it almost immediately. So this begs the question, if they want a demo immediately, and we have a mantra or a mandate to never demo early, what do we do there? Option number 2 is kind of the flip side. The customer's always right. Whenever they ask for a demo, just give them a demo. And we see this driving a lot of unqualified demos where the sales team just says, hey, we've got to have this pre-sales resource right away. This is they want a demo and we need a demo, so give us a demo. So, the challenge here, the reason this happens in certain companies is they have this idea that if we just give the prospect whatever they want, when they want it, that's the best way to go about it. And maybe an oversimplification, but it's kind of a seller, I would say a bit of a haphazard understanding of what the buyer actually needs at what stages. And as you'll see, we're going to actually advocate that we do give the buyers what they want when they want it, but maybe with some very specific process and thoughts around it. And so as we share these ideas today, hopefully you'll be able to take it away and kind of massage these ideas and processes in ways that will fit your company effectively. So problems with the status quo, never demoing too early. 70% of prospects have to wait 1 to 3 weeks. This is from our own research. 1 to 3 weeks to get a demo. Think of what that does for the sales cycle, especially when you have that first demo, then they want another demo, then they bring in some other people, and we're not quite ready to dive in deeper because we got to bring them along. It can really stretch out that sales cycle. This is obviously frustrating to prospects and sales, and it opens the door to competitors. So the longer that you have this time stretching out, and you also lose momentum as you go along between appointments, there's this momentum drop off that can sometimes happen. And that can also open the doors to competitors. So on the customer's always right, the challenge is a lot of times we'll get pre-sales people jumping in and overwhelming them with information, because pre-sales sales engineers, many of you are experts, and it can be sometimes difficult to know exactly how much to share, and it's not uncommon to share too much information too early. So that's one of the challenges with this approach. And then also just this big overuse of SE time and resources. So this goes to the underqualified or unqualified demo. I would say there's opportunity costs as well. In never demo too early, you get funnel attrition, meaning prospects dropping out of that funnel early in the process before they should, because they're not getting the information that they want. And in option 2, it's really wasted resources. And the big opportunity cost, I would say, in option 2 is we're overwhelming the pre-sales team with so much demand for demos that they don't have effective time to truly prepare, rehearse for those really key accounts as well as they could, or spend more time on those accounts with the sales team strategizing and producing the right kinds of solutions. So again, opportunity costs, I would just ask you to ask yourselves and your teams, what's the opportunity cost of doing demos the way that we do them today? So I would say another thing that causes a challenge, or at least a mismatch in the way that we think about demos and the way that we often hear about it discussed, is just that the word demo is too narrowly defined. And this is when we hear, send them a demo early in the sales process or buying process. They'll say, oh my goodness, no, we don't demo early. It's too early to send a demo. Well, yes, I agree. If it's a 30-minute demo or an hour-long demo, you don't want to dump that on them right at the beginning. And so we're going to talk about demos in these different types of demos and how they relate to the buying stages today. A lot of times we hear sales engineers talk about 2 types of demos, sometimes 3, but usually 2. It's the standard or vanilla demo is often the term that's used. that is by good sales engineers is tailored on the fly, but is just based on generic demo content. And then there's the technical demo or the custom demo, which is the full demo tailored to each prospect, loading their data into their database and different things like that. So it's often combined with the proof of concept or proof of value project as well. So we're going to argue that there are other types of demos, and we really ought to be breaking these out into different types, and that in a lot of ways, these are getting handled in some way or another right now in many of your organizations. But if you had a better process and structure around it, it could be more effective. So to begin with, I want to shift all of our focus to the buyer. So often in sales, we're thinking about the selling process. What do we need to do to move this sale along? And really, what would be more effective than that is to ask the question, what do the buyers need to do, and what do they need to learn to be able to move their purchase along? Because in the end, we can't sign the contract. Only they can close the deal. So the more we can facilitate them, the better we'll be able to move the purchase along and the sale along. So, and this is really the focus of the book, Selling It Is Easy, Buying Is Hard, is a framework on buyer enablement. And so we're not going to go into more depth on this, but I encourage you to think about your processes from a buyer perspective. So we'll do a little exercise on this today. I want to do a little thought exercise where you put yourselves in the buyer's shoes. What do they really want to know and need to know at each stage of their buyer journey? And then what are they ready for? Because our demos should be built in a way that is sensitive to their readiness in both length, content, and accessibility. And by accessibility, I mean just their ability to consume it. And so let's talk about some of the different stages. So let's talk now about the 6 demo types, then we'll talk about the buyer stages and how these relate to those stages. So, and I'll briefly talk about these because we're going to dive into each one of these in more detail in a minute. So the vision demo is really all about helping the prospect catch the vision of how their life will be better when they implement your solution. What's the vision of the future? And if they like that vision, they actually want to see the product. At this stage, we don't want to deliver the whole product demo. They just want a little peek into it, enough to, they're actually looking for disqualifiers here to see if they can disqualify you. They like your vision, but is there anything that would just take you off their list? So the micro demo is effectively a shorter version of what we'd call the qualifying and discovery demo, or what is often called just the standard demo. So they're both product focused early in the sales process, but as you go along, they get more and more in-depth as the prospect wants to learn more about that demo, about the product or solution, I mean. Then comes the technical demo, which is what the pre-sales, sales engineers, experts are best at. And that's where a lot of consulting happens, and the deep dive and so on. And then we like to think of some demos as called closing demos. So this often revolves around questions that people have in the late stages about what I call emotional ROI. So they've largely decided they want to use your solution, but they aren't sure how to implement it. They are worried. They're actually in a state of fear at this point that that it's going to not work out the way that they expect. And so they ask a lot of questions. How does this work? Tell me a little bit more about this. For us, for example, we get a lot of questions about, well, how exactly do you integrate with Salesforce or other CRMs and marketing automation tools? And how does GDPR compliance work exactly? And, because at this point, they're really thinking about the specifics about how they're going to implement. And a lot of times, sales engineers are called on call after call after call to demonstrate this or that, And so we like to categorize those into closing demos. A related type of demo to this is the FAQ demo. So throughout, you may have customers that just have specific questions about specific areas of your product or solution that come up, and they just want to dive into that for whatever reason. It's just an area they're really intrigued about, they have questions about, they want to know how this or that integrates with something else. And a lot of times with certain roles and in certain industries, you can almost predict what questions are going to come up. And so we like to group those into the sixth category of frequently asked question demos. They often are not full demos, but and sometimes they're handled by just a couple of PowerPoint screenshots or whatnot. But a lot of times pre-sales has to get on the call and talk through some of that as well. So we'll address those as well. Now let's talk about buying process. There are lots of different buying processes out there. I'm going to focus on one that I really like from Kevin Davis's book called Sales Manager's Guide to Greatness, because there's a section in that book that's really focused on this idea of the buyer-centric buying process. And what I like about it is, instead of stages in the sales process like demo, price quote, verbal commitment, and so on, it's really stages in the buying process. These first 6 stages, and then 7 and 8 are after the purchase. They get value, and then they're going to come back and buy more or resubscribe or whatever it may be. So there are 3 large areas of progress through the buying process, which is need, learn, and buy. And you can match these up with different buying journeys and buying processes you'll see from different analyst firms or experts in the field. But I really like this area of need is they're discovering that they don't like the status quo, whatever it is. So then they start to do research and see what's out there, ways that they can solve that problem. Then they start comparing the different vendors and comparing to what they're doing internally. And then fear sets in because they realize they really do have to change. I mean, they realize that to some extent up here, but then they're starting to fear that they're going to be able to actually realize the value. Once you help them overcome that, then they reach commitment and make the purchase. So for a framework in this webinar, that's the buying process we're going to use. So how do the different demo types line up to the buying process? So the vision demo matches up quite nicely with change and discontent, meaning at the stage that they realize they need to make a change or they can't tolerate the problems that they have anymore, they're looking for a new vision. Now the vision demo, and we'll come back to this, is not something that we're going to advocate that pre-sales delivers, right? This is often, the vision is not always done in a demo even at all. It can be done just through catching the vision by looking at the website and interacting with other marketing. So this is often marketing's role, but it can also be business development reps, which we'll talk about. But the point is that the need here is to make a change, and they need a new vision about how the future should happen. Then they start learning. And so preliminary research is about, well, which vendors could help me out potentially? And at this point, they don't really need to see everything, but they need to see something. And they are very interested in getting into the product even this early. And a lot of times they don't even want to talk to you, ironically. So they avoid having the sales conversation. And this is where you get some funnel attrition if you do not help them when they want to be helped, because they want a demo. And if you don't give them one at this stage, a lot of times they'll just go with a vendor that will. Then the further research or the further learning category of comparison is when they want the standard demo. They really want to dig in and get a really good understanding of how you solve their problem or help them achieve their vision, and how you compare to other vendors. And then finally, the technical demo is really there to help with the emotional ROI. They're worried, again, that they're going to put all this time and effort into it, not only as an individual, but as an organization, and that they're not going to realize the value. So they want to reduce risk as much as possible, and that technical demo and the POCs, the proof of concepts that go along with it, and so on, can help reduce that dramatically. as well as the strategic consulting that happens can really help set you apart, further apart in the comparison factor, with being able to deliver exactly what the customer needs. And then finally, the closing demos are about just making a final commitment. They've largely overcome their fear, but they want to get the details down about their commitment. They're still afraid, but their fear is waning, their confidence is growing, and they want to make that commitment. So, and then the FAQ demos, of course, kind of go throughout. Now let's take a look at how each of these demos and these stages, what the buyer is thinking at each one of these stages. So in this change and discontent stage, in the need phase, they're often thinking about questions like, will this solution help me achieve my objectives or solve my problems? So again, buyer empathy. Put yourself in the buyer's shoes. What are they thinking? What are they wanting? What are they needing? And what are they ready for? What will my life or my company's life be like if we adopt this technology or this solution? And then how have other companies succeeded with your solution? Am I going to be the first guinea pig, or what kind of social proof is out there? So you can see in the need stage, and this is the type of, these are the types of questions that need to be addressed in the vision demo. So in the research stage, in this learn phase, at this point, the buyer's often thinking, I like this vision, but now I want to see the product. In general, how does this solution work? But they're not really ready for a super deep dive, even a deep standard demo. They don't want to get into that yet. They're still making their list of potential vendors. So they're thinking, don't overwhelm me, just show me only what I'm interested in. They don't want to sit through a long demo that is not tailored to their unique interests. And again, this is why we call it a micro demo. It is product centered, whereas the vision demo is not product centered. It's really more about the problem, solution, and benefit. Then later in the, and I wanted to mention it here, they're looking for those obvious disqualifiers. I mentioned that earlier, but this is, they're qualifying you at the same time that you're qualifying them. So this micro demo is a really key stage for them. And then help me connect the dots between the vision and how the solution gets us there. They don't have to understand everything about the product at this point. They just want to see, you sold me on the vision, but now help me understand how your product actually achieves that. And I don't need to see everything. I just want to understand how your product actually gets there. Then when you get into the compare stage, this is where the qualifying and discovery demo is. And again, what's often called the standard demo. And the buyers are thinking, okay, now I'm generally convinced this is a good potential solution. I'm getting very serious. I want to start digging deeper, and I'm narrowing down my list of solutions. And maybe I've already disqualified some of the other vendors. So still, just only show me what interests me. I don't need a full-blown custom proof of concept right now, or I don't want you to just dive into every last thing that you think is cool, but I need to go deeper than I have in the past. And then especially, how is this different from other vendors? So one thing that I think is lacking, at least from what I've read in research, I haven't seen enough other company demos to sort of say from my own perspective but Gartner, for example, shares this research that most buyers can't tell the difference between one vendor and another. They all seem the same. And vendors, as a rule, have a hard time identifying and communicating effectively what those differences are. So marketing and sales, that's usually their area of hopeful expertise, but pre-sales should be able to be effective at that as well. So at this stage, they're trying to differentiate and make sure that they've got the right vendors that, on the list. The technical demo, then again, at this stage, they're saying, I need to verify the solution's really going to work in our environment with our solutions and so on. And you've made my short list, but I'm afraid of making a bad decision. So, prove to me that this is a good decision. So This is the fear stage. They want to be committed. They just want to make sure they're not making a bad mistake. So that's what the pre-sales really helps push them over the line there and get them to make the commitment. Then finally, in the closing stages, they're saying, you know what, nice work. I'm convinced you're the right vendor, but I still have a bunch of questions about how we get the results we've been talking about. How long will implementation take? What's involved? Is there training? How do you integrate with other systems? Some of this might be covered in the technical demo, but often there are these trailing questions. And then, you know, what about data security and GDPR and things like that? So this is roughly how these different types of demos correlate with the different stages of the buying process. And as you, again, put yourself in the buyer's shoes, you will be able to be more effective at all of your demos, whether you're doing them live or automated. So this is a bit of a overwhelming slide, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I just want to explain this. You'll be able to download these slides later and review this if you want in more detail. But these are the different types of demos, the recommended or potential length. If they're automated, these would be our recommendations, right? If they're live, do you really ever have a demo that's only 10 to 15 minutes? It's possible. I would say most pre-sales people have an ability. If the salesperson says, hey, these guys have 15 minutes, can you give them a demo? That's the micro demo, effectively. And so a lot of you are doing some of these. There's just not a super strong process around them, perhaps. So here's the length and recommended lengths if you automate them, the type of content that we've been talking about, and then how deep in the product you should be going in these types of demos, and then what's the objective, and we'll talk about these in a little bit more detail in just a second. And then who should be building them and who should be delivering them. And we'll focus on these areas for the scaling, because right now, almost all demos in most organizations are delivered by pre-sales. Unless you've got a simplified product and it's simple and easy enough for sales to do, which a lot of small businesses have, but large businesses often do not. So when it comes to the vision demo, who should build this vision demo? Probably marketing. Remember, it's focused on problem, solution, benefit, but there should be some screenshots in there. Whether or not this is automated or in live in some way, they still want to peek at the product. Nobody wants just the vision and no view into how the vision actually comes about. So all the other demos really ought to be built by sales engineer, unless in these closing demos, for example, you have the AE might be doing an FAQ demo. I'm sorry, not the closing demo, but the FAQ demos. The AE might be handling just questions about specific benefits or things later at certain points. But so who's building out the demos? The sales engineers should be doing that, but who's delivering them? We would argue that you're in the vision demo, if you're delivering that the BDR ought to deliver that as a qualifying to get to the sales, and the sales ought to be delivering the micro and the qualifying and discovery demo. And some of you are now saying, I'm going to stop listening because at our company, that would be impossible. So please keep listening because I want to help you, again, catch the vision of how this could be possible. And again, the question I want you to noodle on is, how can we get sales to deliver, so BDRs and the AEs to deliver these demos, even if we do them live? We're not talking about automation yet. And then pre-sales can be focused on delivering technical demos, closing demos, and maybe FAQ demos, depending on those. So we'll come back to this automation in just a minute. But how, by breaking these out and categorizing these and identifying exactly what types of content should go in them, then you're set up with the foundation to provide and equip your sales team to be delivering the initial demos, not the pre-sales team. So this is one area of focus, even if you don't implement automation. So where do these specific demos belong in, say, a little example sales cycle? So the BDR might give the vision demo as a way to get the qualified lead and set the appointment. Then the account executive gives the micro demo And the goal here is to qualify them, continue to qualify, prepare for the first appointment. I'm sorry, if the BDR gives this, it's to prepare for the first appointment with the AE. So we would recommend that you even look at having your BDRs or your sales development reps give the vision demo and the micro demo. Sometimes the vision demo is not necessary, they're already qualified, but if they're doing outbound account development or something. But the micro demo is often given, we would recommend the BDR or the AE gives that demo. And then one of the secondary objectives is to discover stakeholders. So the earlier you can discover those stakeholders, the better. The qualifying and discovery demo is a new stage that what we would call the demo marketing qualified lead, or DMQL. So if we go back to these others, you could see at this stage, the BDR is trying to gain a marketing qualified lead, maybe call it a sales accepted lead in your organization where they can set up an appointment. Then we're saying, are they a sales qualified lead, or are we qualifying them as an opportunity? This is a new term that we've come up with, demo MQL. And so this is a qualified lead that is ready for sales, pre-sales resource. So the question is, what makes a prospect qualified to use a sales engineering resource? So we would argue that it's one of the ways is to go through the standard demo, and now they're educated and ready to talk those deep dive specifics. And when we talk about automation, one of the qualifiers is to go through an automated demo, potentially. So then on the technical demo, win the shortlist or verbal decision. And lastly, in the closing, is increase confidence in their emotional return on investment. They're going to actually be able to do all this, both personally and as an organization, and get the value. So we like to think that this is a linear process. Oh, we give this demo, but we all know that's not true. And this diagram by Gartner shows, and this is a really good ebook from Gartner called Win More B2B Sales Deals, so I encourage you to look this up, shows how complicated the buying experience is. And it shows how recursive and difficult it can be because you have multiple stakeholders coming in, lots of different groups and things that have to get involved. So even though this buying process is linear in a general sense, it's certainly not linear in a specific sense. Every organization goes through it in a slightly different way, and it is recursive, like I mentioned, goes back on itself. So this is really where it helps make the case for automation. And because you have to keep going back and bringing in different stakeholders and bringing them through the buying process. So we all know that demos, there's no one-size-fits-all demo. Peter Cohen, was chatting with him, and he's got a lot to say about different types of demos as well. So I encourage you to look him up if you're not familiar with Peter Cohen and his book, The Great Demo, or I think it's just called Great Demo. And he likes to use this phrase, one size fits all, right? And I like that because so often when we get into repetitive demoing, we do end up with a one size fits all kind of thing. So how do you personalize effectively, and then how do you personalize at scale? So that really is what gets into demo automation. And so I want to just briefly talk about that. What is demo automation, even though we're not really going to give you any kind of demo of our solution. But again, in a sense, you might say this is a vision demo for some of you. So I'll give you a peek into the product. So a demo, an automated demo, is a self-directed interactive video demo that lists the different topics, features, benefits, whatever over here, and asks the viewer to indicate what's very important, somewhat or not important to them. And then based on that, it uses a proprietary method to pull together videos and documents. And by videos, I mean screen recordings of product or slide decks or things like that, and pulls that into an interactive video area where they can have a demo tailored to their unique interests. And then it tracks their engagement, so you can look at the different stakeholders that have engaged in the process, in the demo, and what is very important to them, what's not important to them, what's somewhat important to them, and you can see how it compares across the different stakeholders in the buying group. So it not only personalizes to each stakeholder, but it helps you discover and engage those stakeholders more effectively, which again, buyer enablement is really all about finding those stakeholders, helping them get what they need as a group when they need it, and coaching them, guiding them through the process. So where does demo automation fit? Where does it work well? Where does it not work well? The vision demo definitely can be used there, can be put on the website, marketing campaigns, BDR outreach. It's great for that. The micro demo, which again is very product centered, but is just a really light touch on product. Now we've moved past the vision. Also, definitely can be automated. The BDRs can send these out ahead of their first appointment, and the AEs before or after their first appointment, depending on how that conversation goes. Again, the objective is to help prepare them for further appointments and discover stakeholders. The qualifying and discovery demo can often be automated. Sometimes you're going to want to do this one, depending on the account and how much personalization you might want to do, even at this stage. We usually recommend that you automate this, but you may want to get choosy depending. And again, this one can be as long as maybe 30 minutes of self-directed video demo. Again, you don't want to throw this on somebody up here. They're not going to spend 25 minutes going through a demo, but once they've seen these other demos, then they're ready for something a little deeper. Then the technical demo, this is where it just really doesn't fit. You're not going to automate the technical demos. This is really where the sales engineers are primed to shine and bring their best value to the organization. The one exception I would say is if you're going down market, you may want to try to automate the entire process. That may mean you're eliminating this because there's no technical demo stage. But the goal when you're going down market is to reduce the number of touches from sales. And some of our customers, large customers, have been able to close deals as high as $80,000 contracts with no demos at all. And granted, that's a small contract in some organizations, but when they're selling into small businesses, being able to close those deals without having to engage pre-sales is a big win. And then closing demos and FAQ demos, definitely good for automation. So how would this look in the process? When you're automating, instead of delivering a live demo, the vision demo might be happening on the website, or maybe the BDR sends them that. There's this space between the time the BDR sets the appointment and the first appointment. What are you doing with that space? Well, that space can be filled and help maintain momentum and help educate by sending them an automated micro demo that they can engage in before they have the first appointment. Not only is this helpful for that prospect, but they start sharing that with other stakeholders. And sometimes in that first sales appointment, you get multiple stakeholders already educated and ready to dive deeper. So one of the main things I just want to point out here on this slide is just use automated demos in the spaces between the appointments to try to help maintain momentum and drive the live interactions. Remember, it's going to bring them better educated, and it's going to give you data. So as you see what's driving their interest the most, then you're able to respond more effectively. So as an example, if a BDR sends a vision demo out, and as they get that data back, when they get them on the phone, they can position that conversation that will help them more effectively set the appointment. And then as they send the micro demo out before the first appointment, if the customer watches it, then the salesperson can look at the engagement in these two demos and position the conversation to dive deeper at that point. So hopefully this gives you some idea of some ways, especially to our existing users, ways and places to use these different types of demos. So we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to zip through this a little bit, but how do you choose which demo to give them at what stage? Well, obviously, you want to ask where they are in the buying process. ask, is it worth making them wait, and who can get them what they want? And how can we equip them effectively for that? So the bottom line is, how do we scale all this? So in summary, what we're really trying to do is either delegate or automate. So this is a great book, if you have never read it, by a guy named Rory Vaden called Procrastinate on Purpose. And he's got what's called the focus funnel. And it's a great way to do what he calls multiply your time, which ultimately is what you're trying to do to scale anything. And in particular with pre-sales resources, the sales engineers, their time is the most valuable thing that they have to offer the company. And it's often squandered on these repetitive demos. So how can we help automate or delegate? So the question you should be asking yourself is, how can we help sales deliver these demos live, or how can we automate these initial stages, as many of them as possible, and free up that time for the technical stage to be used, to be done primarily, or for that to be the predominant use of the sales engineer's time. So just want to leave you with these thought-provoking questions. If the buyers in the buying groups in your deals could get what they want, what they need when they want it, how would it impact their likelihood to purchase? And then if 90% of your SE's time were spent on technical demo setup, prep, rehearsal, and delivery and strategic conversations, how would it change your business? And I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think these are questions that I want you to take back to your teams and and think about those. And hopefully this has been thought-provoking in a way that, even if you don't apply it in exactly the way that we're thinking, it can help you in your own organization. I want to leave you with one other thought. It's another type of demo that I didn't put in the list because it just kind of hangs out there in its own little world. And it's what I would call the instant demo. So in Consensus, as an example, you'll need technology to be able to do this. But in Consensus, for example, you can just click a little record button and record anything on your screen. I'll give you just a quick example. I'd like to share this example because it had a big impact on us. Oracle was already a customer. We were trying to upsell them into an expansion, and we couldn't get a hold of a key stakeholder. In the meantime, one of our key contacts asked, how do your analytics work? I need more information about that. So that day, I went out, hit record, did a 7-minute walkthrough on our analytics, very custom, and sent it out. And that demo got shared with 12 different people in 24 hours, including our main contact we were trying to reach. And within 6 weeks, we were in his office in London closing an expansion deal. So these instant demos can make a big difference. They're highly custom, but they're very easy to make because you just hit record and send it out. So that's my 7th bonus demo type. So give you more than you expected. And here we are at the top of the hour. So there's not a ton of time for questions. I'm going to stay on and answer questions, but feel free to take off if you need to. We'll stay on for maybe another 5 or 10 minutes to address any questions that may have come up. And but feel free to leave if you need, and you can always come back and check the recording. So give me a moment here. And so one of the questions that often comes up in this topic is, how do we build all this out? And when it comes to Consensus and automated demos, the question of building is a lot of times marketing wants to get involved in the early stages of the demos. And I'm going to go back to this slide. I meant to stay on this slide here. And we would argue that marketing's role is in the vision demo, but they don't belong anywhere else. So please don't take any offense, marketing. Now they might want to tell you how the the logo is placed, or the colors of the demo player, or things like that. But we really want to encourage that the demos, that the content is built for these demos, built by pre-sales. And there's actually some research on this that we've done that shows, because we used to think marketing should build all the demos because that they look the best, right? This was years ago. But one, it takes too long, and two, you actually get less engagement, which is a little bit counterintuitive. But the more that the prospects can feel like they're getting a real peek behind the curtain, and see what's really going on, that gets the most engagement. So in fact, we have some customers at Oracle that were telling us the same thing while we were doing our own research, which is at the beginning, they were building some demos that had some music and different things, and they weren't getting the engagement they wanted. And then they said, well, let's just record the demos as if we were giving them live, and do them that way, and their engagement shot up. And that's what we've discovered as well. And so at the very beginning, the intro, the intro of a demo, or the vision demo, definitely could be influenced by marketing, because you want to help set the stage and work on the value proposition. But after that, the real content should be built by the sales engineers. So let's see, any other questions here? Okay, let's see. No other questions at this time. So given the hour, thank you all for participating today. I hope this was useful. I know we crammed through a lot of information today. We'll post this as soon as we have the recording completed and processed, and you'll be able to download the deck as well. So I hope you enjoyed it, and would love to hear any comments. If you want to reach out, I'd love to hear any ways that you think this might apply in your organization, or even if you feel like it doesn't apply, like Garin, you're up in the night, you're missing there's a big hole in your presentation, or anything like that. Would love to hear that. So I hope you can participate in our future webinars, and also don't forget about that pre-sales survey that we're doing. We're trying to close up all survey responses by the end of the month. So if you can do that before the holidays, then you can see those results when we publish them in January. So have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.